reserved for members of the public to address the committee on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked to identify themselves and state the subject of their comment. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the chairman of the committee has the option of asking the speaker to hold the comment until the item is called. The committee is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda. No adverse conclusion shall be drawn if the committee does not respond to public comment. We do ask that you go to the podium and you sign in.
Okay. Any public comment? Negative? Okay, new business. 3A, discussion recommendation, possible recommendation on groundwater sustainability plan and sustainability goals. Dina?
Yes. So as part of the GSP, part of the regulations require that the GSP identifies sustainability goals. So these are goals for, my understanding is these are the goals, there's one single goal or set of goals for the entire subbasin, and that's included in the GSPs. If there's multiple GSPs, then that goal or set of goals should be included in the coordination agreement that is signed by all entities who have individual GSPs or joint GSPs. So the first page here that was handed out to you is on the screen, just discusses the regulation, and I was going to skip to the next page, but Andrea's here. So the second page, and I'll leave it on the screen, or Andrea can scroll to the second page. So the second page is a draft proposed sustainability goal for the Madera subbasin. So I'm going to just let everybody take a moment to read it if they like, and then just any ideas, feedback, or discussion recommendations on this. And it'll probably be nuanced a little bit as we go, and there'll probably be some editing to it, but this is just the overall concept for the sustainability goal of the subbasin. I'm sorry. I'm going to be using the whiteboard shortly, so if you can actually move that, that'd be great. Thanks. I don't want to knock it off. So it's broken down by goal description, discussion of measures, and then explanation of how the goal will be achieved in the next 20 years.
Just as a reminder, this is subbasin wide, so it's specific to MID, would be for the plan as a whole.
Tommy, that would be the GSP for the 4?
So as Dina mentioned, you'd either have to be accounted for in the coordination agreement amongst the different plans or within the overall plan for the basis. So since we have multiple, it need to be recognized in that coordination agreement if it's not consistent.
Well, it's supposed to be consistent. So this would be in our GSP along with the other GSPs or rolled into the coordination agreement.
It's just in the plan.
Yes.
It's very different plans.
Yeah. Okay. Any thoughts, ideas? Is the groundwater MIT groundwater committee okay with this? With a few, I mean, obviously with some editing.
I don't have any changes I can think of it. It's
Okay.
like a general goal.
Yeah, it's very
objectives.
conceptual, high level. We just want to put this in front of the committee as we're moving forward with developing the GSP. So
We're not taking an action to approve or anything like that. It's just a chance to comment so we can give direction to staff as we work with the groups to put this into the plan, which for ultimate approval.
So,
Devil's in the details. I say let's move on.
okay. Yep. So for 3A, we'll just move forward with this language or similar language, and if anything changes, we will let you know. Okay, 3B.
Oh. Go ahead, Dana. 3B.
Discussion recommendation on measurable objectives, minimum thresholds, and 2020-2040 implementation period transitional thinking.
Okay, so on the screen and then the board, you have handouts. This is an example of what we've been talking about in the technical expert meetings related to measurable objectives and minimum thresholds. So those are two requirements in the GSP process. So this, I just want to be really clear, this is just an example with some of the concepts that we've been talking about. So we're not talking about any specific details related to this hydrograph. Again, this is just for concepts and how we are discussing setting these within the technical expert group, and obviously want any feedback from our board members or the public on this. But this conceptual example is a hydrograph. The blue dots are the physical measurements. And we have this from.
So this is at one specific well or an average of a well?
This is one specific well, and if I
Okay.
can, oops, sorry. I'm trying.
How did you calculate the minimum threshold?
Okay, so I'm going to explain that, and if I can get this. So this is one specific well, and so, sorry.
I can go through the point.
Okay,
I was trying to-
Tommy's going to be Deanna? Okay.
I got
So-
another question.
So the blue dots on the left-hand side of the screen are the specific well measurements for this well. The green vertical lines represent the implementation period, so 2020 to 2040 for Sigma. So what our consultants have done, Davis Engineering, and that's the consultants for the whole sub-basin, is they have taken specific wells and the well data, and then they've applied through their modeling process all the projects that are proposed by all of the GSAs within the sub-basin. So the results of that, along with some average type climate conditions that they're anticipating, is the reddish brownish line that zigzags up and down. So that's what they're anticipating this specific well, how it would perform with all of the GSP projects in place for the entire sub-basin, along with the average climate conditions that they're taking into account.
So let me just state that again. So the green line, 2020, that's when the plan takes effect. To implement those projects by 2040, you're seeing what would happen, assuming an average hydrology during that period, and then beyond. How those projects would impact the groundwater levels. So obviously, day one, 2020, we're not going to have all projects done basin-wide. So what does that mean? What are the impacts, and that's what this is intending to show. A little bit of information on that.
How do they model, say, 2030 when, X amount of crops are going to be gone?
So they're taking one of the projects that's being proposed by Madera County is demand reduction.
Yeah.
So that project theoretically is being modeled in this process. So all projects for the GSPs that have been given by the different GSAs are being reflected in this hydrograph. And again, this is just one specific well, but to give an example or an idea.
So the county theoretically gave the information about how much
Yes,
demand reduction
yes.
they're expecting to do within their,
Yeah, but this is one scenario.
This is what's currently being modeled.
This is what's being modeled because their advisory committee.
Correct. Had given them direction at some point.
You're right. It's
So-
one scenario, and that's true because nothing has been finalized.
Right.
So this
Nothing's
is
been
definitely
finalized there.
definitely a moving target.
Yes.
But what we need to discuss is the potentials and how our approach is related to setting these thresholds.
Right. And again, this is all concept level right now. But so what the discussion is theoretically this brownish zigzag line would be the water level responses to all of the projects during this implementation period and then beyond through 2090. With that, what we've also looked at is the number of domestic wells in this section and the average top perforation depth and the average well depth. So for this particular well in this particular section, and you can see on the top, there's a total of 6 domestic wells, and then it has all of the domestic well data associated with it. Because one of the things we need to consider is all of the undesirable results that occur and how that affects all of the different stakeholders. Obviously, domestic wells are a very important topic, and so we want to take a look at those. Now, I want to be really clear. This isn't the only measure that's going to be looked at. This is an example of how these measures are being looked at. So there's a lot of things to consider in addition to this. There's water quality. There's existing stored groundwater, there's subsidence, there's all of these different factors that need to be looked at. But this is an example of how the technical experts are looking at it.
But probably the greatest impact is obviously a result of the lowering of groundwater tables.
Exactly.
We've seen that recently due to the extended drought and what can happen. So this is obviously one of the most important points.
So basically what this is saying for domestic wells, so if you look at, this particular scenario and course of action, the water table on this particular well could drop 100 feet by 2035, give or take.
Yes,
Right.
but also keep in mind that's assuming an average hydrology during the.
That's average hydro, assuming all the averages and whatnot.
It can swing greatly based on what the hydrology
Well,
actually
and
does.
that's a drought scenario over where that red arrow is.
Well, we're getting to that. So
Well,
that,
the point is it's of a concern, because if you lower the water level 100 feet for a lot of people, it's gonna run them out of water.
And keep in mind that most of the projects are related to capturing wet year water supplies, right? That's what's putting water in the ground, obviously. So you see in the future greater swings in the highs and lows and variability of the groundwater levels because of more active groundwater recharge through the projects that are proposed.
How was that
So-
minimum threshold?
Yeah.
Is that calculated? Is that from the function of the slope of that line and they just took the intercept and did
yeah, so this, again, I just want to focus really quick. The 2020 to 2040 is during the implementation period. And now the consultants have also modeled an additional 50 years. So 2040 through 2090 with all of these projects in place, and again with, estimates on what the climate will do. And so, again, you can see this kind of brownish line, it starts to trend up and such. So the way that the measurable objective is being depicted on here is essentially the average past the 2040 time period. The way the minimum threshold is being identified here is taking, so this is actually a drought scenario that's being modeled here. So one of our discussions was, what if that drought scenario, worst case scenario, we'll assume it's extended for a 10-year time period. So it's essentially trending this drought scenario with the same slope line down to this level, which is now identified on this graph as the minimum threshold. And so that's the concept that was used for setting the measurable objectives and the minimum thresholds on this graph. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about. Does everybody think that that's an okay concept to utilize? Or any other thoughts? I mean, there's literally an infinite way that you can do this and that you can slice it. And so, we're dealing with a lot of averages and a lot of unknowns and just trying to do something that's reasonable. We've heard people say, well, just set the minimum threshold, as low as the graph will go. And that, that's an idea, but that's not necessarily, I don't think, Madera Basin's goal of achieving sustainability. I think, we do want to be sustainable going forward. And so we do need to set things, and plus, we have to guess that DWR might not be okay with that. So we need to do things that do seem reasonable.
So the possible numbers that can be moved are the threshold and the objective? I mean, the input numbers that are going into the model, those are kind of a done deal.
Well, no, not necessarily. So that's another discussion point, is that, this, as we sit today, the blue dot is about right there for this well. I have personally heard, and I'm sure you guys have also, MID is sustainable, relatively sustainable, and has been since its existence, and is looking at going forward, is going to remain sustainable. So, we've heard landowners say, well, no, maybe it should just remain where it's at, MID growth, because, right, they're not, in their minds, contributing to this. And so, that's one concept too. And so this line isn't set in stone by any means. This is what is being modeled for the projects that have been brought to date by the GSAs.
So saying that in a different way, we as MID need to look at this a little differently than others, because being that the district is very close to sustainable, will achieve sustainability very quickly in this implementation period. that borrowing of the groundwater or taking of the groundwater is impacting our growers directly. So what is this board ultimately going to be comfortable with allowing during this period of time while projects are implemented and sustainability is achieved basin-wide? And what are those impacts? So we've shown potential impacts to domestic wells, but there's also impacts to MID wells who are taking surface water, and in our view, will be reaching that sustainability very quickly.
And so that's really kind of what's posed for you guys today is, what is acceptable for the MID GSA related to this, not only related to where the minimum threshold and measurable objectives are set, but also where the brown trend line plays right now.
And this well is located within the MID, this particular well?
This particular well is located within the MID, within MID.
And, of course, acknowledging going to zero immediately, sub-basin-wide would create an economic impact, and I don't think, not to speak for the board, but I don't think that's something that anyone would like to go with. Some would have that opinion, but not everybody.
Right.
What are the pink boxes?
Those are just showing low points for this
So
scenario.
it's a low point during the implementation period and low point after.
That interval from 1980 to 2000, well, 20, I guess is forecast. How many dry years and wet years do you have? Is it pretty even?
Yeah, so that's how they actually define this. The modeling period is like 1989 through 2015.
Because it'll change the slope depending on how many intervals you have of dry and wet.
Right, so this is actually, so the 1989 to 2015 time period was chosen by our consultants because they thought it depicted a pretty average conditions. There was pretty much average number of wet years, dry years, and normal years in that scenario. This slope, though, isn't really being that affected. The slope going forward shouldn't really be affected that much by the historic slope. Because the slope going forward is really looking at, layering on the GSP projects and then the climate along with it. Not necessarily how the well historically performed.
So, given that so this slope is based on what their models or what their basic model might show as their scenario to reach sustainability, correct?
Compliance is
For the basin.
That line is showing what the model predicts with the implementation of the projects
As currently proposed.
Basin-wide.
assuming the average hydrology during the implementation period and wet and dry years based on historical information.
So, the question is first of all, on our deal, they call that water that's above that squiggly line.
Well, yeah, that's gonna be another discussion. So, do you want to discuss that?
Well, I don't know, but
Okay.
the thing is, the base, if you want to get down to the question, Brian, what I guess you're asking is it all right if by the time we reach sustainability, we drop our water level 100 acre feet, or 100 feet rather, not acre feet. We drop the water level and the pumping level in MID, because this well's in the MID.
Well, for one example, well.
This is one example.
This is
well.
one example
Yeah.
well, so some will be less, some will be
Right.
more.
But this is a basin-wide expectation, right? This is a basin-wide,
The trend should look
so
somewhat the same.
if we're saying that should the MID allow those growers, we're talking about everybody, right?
Correct.
I mean, if the growers with MID lose their water level, it's gonna be basin-wide levels, right?
It's going to be basin-wide levels, but the point is the MID growers have been paying taxes and whatnot for a long time. And then whatever water level we have right now is being sustained by the MID. And we're basically level here. We're basically sustainable here. The reason our water level is dropping is because basin-wide is being overpumped. And so the question, now the thing is as growers have talked to me, they're in the MID, not in the Madera, but in the MID, and said, tell them to quit pumping right now. I don't want my well to drop anymore. If they did that, there'd be a train wreck in the county. I mean, how would the that's, in my mind, not reasonable. But, so the question is, what is reasonable? Is dropping it over the next 20 years, 100 foot in the MID, because we're sustaining everybody around us, is that reasonable? You know? Because that water that's being overdrafted, essentially, is MID water. And then some. Okay?
And it had to.
Correct. And so we're spending all this money on, as MID, we just bought a basin. We're giving water, we're delivering water to growers to percolate in the ground for free, or half price, or at the end of the year, almost nothing. We're doing everything we can to put as much water as we can in the ground. So is it reasonable over the next 20 years to say it's okay to drop, and it's not just our ag wells. How about everybody that lives in this basin that has a domestic? Their pump is 25 feet off the bottom of the well right now. You drop it 100 feet, what's going to happen to the domestic wells all around this town?
Well, and,
So, you know,
yeah, and that, I mean, that's this example right here is that, you know, the average domestic well depth for this section lays here, then theoretically, you know, we'll say at least half of the domestic wells in this section would go dry at some point during the implementation period, which we're not saying, you know, should or shouldn't be done. It's just, if that is what is going to be accepted in the GSP for these projects and programs, then if and how will this be mitigated and by whom?
And if then a drought hits,
Right. This
and
is
you're
not
approaching that minimum threshold even earlier, what's going to happen?
and that's a good point. Who's going to pay for these domestic wells to go, you know? I mean, at some point, somebody outside the MID needs to start raising some money so they can mitigate some of this stuff. Which
Yeah.
at this point, they're not. But that's a whole nother issue, really. But, so anyway, the question is what is reasonable? Is zero, in my mind, isn't reasonable. Over 20 years, you know, to stop everybody from pumping right now, that's not reasonable. Then again, is dropping MIDs this well, or dropping our water level 100 foot, is that reasonable? I don't really think that's reasonable either. But, I mean, I think the goal should be, or that measurable objective, I mean, the goal should be to try to balance this thing as quick as we can, bring as much water in as we can. And if you're going to have to bite the bullet, figure out how to start equitably retiring land or do whatever it takes so guys that want to leave can leave today or something. But anyway, so that's the whole issue.
It's all, you know, I'd have to agree with everything you said. I mean, it's, the district's been bringing in water, it's been using as much water as we can possibly use to recharge on behalf of the growers. To see a loss like this, there is, like you said, it's a train wreck, pulling everything to a halt because this is a collaborative effort. And, you know, we all know this is coming down as soon as, you know, the brakes get put and the burden gets shifted, regardless if it's warranted. It's going to be a difficult challenge to get everybody to be friendly and sit together and cooperate. Because then it's going to be argumentative instead of collaborative. But
It may well be argumentative.
so, you know, I don't know what that is. I would like to see the least amount of, you know, damages to district growers when it comes to, you know, it was not too many years ago, we you know, had to extend our wells. They're not a cheap deal to do, but, you know, when you're in the district and you're paying your dues and you've been paying your dues in order to have that water available for you, it's kind of a tough stomach to burden when you're going to have to you know, feel like they're being taken care of, and you still have to flip out some personal finances to extend your well to maintain, even if you're within the range of the turnaround.
You know, the other question in my mind is too, is if you drop our water level in the MID, right where we're putting the water in the ground, how about some of the white area and some of the tougher areas? What do you think the water level will do there?
That is a good question.
You know, I mean,
Has this been modeled on an outside district well?
Yeah, so they've taken, they're looking at selecting wells right now as part of their monitoring and modeling procedure, but we just want to, I mean, you can look at hydrographs literally all day long, I mean, there's, you know, but we just wanted one example one for us to look at and talk about concepts related to it.
The plan looks at the economic impacts related to implementing this program. So it'll be studying those.
You know, I'm not a modeler. I go to these aqua meetings, aqua conferences, and often, you're always in. A lot of models take place, a lot of expectations, we've got excellent modeling, and, you know, to me, I just listen and I think, okay, that's a projection with
Yeah,
no
exactly.
information, and someone said, nah, that number's too high, and that one's too low, but that one's kind of realistic, let's use that number.
That is key to this, Brian. That is very much a model with very rough data that's in it. I mean, all it is a projection based on looking at some historical data and limited data points throughout the subbasin. So this is just a guesstimate based on average hydrology. It could be better, it could be worse. A drought would obviously cause much bigger decline in groundwater table. I mean, you can look at our historic numbers and see the trend that was going on before during the droughts.
So it's kind of tough to, I think I agree with, I think my feel is, you know, minimum impact to district growers because of the fact that they've been committed to keeping the district going in terms of funding and bringing in the water and using it.
do we need to give a specific number recommendation to the rest of the board? Or just a thought to the rest of the board so we can discuss?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a specific number, that's right. No, I mean, I think, you know, again, we're talking very high level concepts with a lot of unknowns. It's just.
High level, this is satellite.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But just whether or not, this is what's going to be included in the GSP. So if we don't think this is reasonable, we need to, if you guys don't think this is reasonable, we need to understand that as soon as possible so that we can go back to the other agencies who are developing the GSP along with the other GSPs, because they all, you know, work together on this and figure out what, if anything, else, you know, GSAs can plan in the implementation period. And so.
Right now, we're just looking at general approach. So
Yeah.
is this committee comfortable recommending moving forward with an average hydrology and these type of results and setting a minimum threshold at something slightly below that point as shown on these example hydrographs?
What's the grade line from 1980 to 2020?
Don't quote me on this, but I believe that's the grade that they did, what's that?
That's the model.
Yeah, this is the grade simulation from the model.
So you have actual data points from that well, and then you have the model well.
It was like a
model predicting where the numbers would be.
Like
Yes.
truth needs a.
So clearly their model's not that great.
Well,
That's pretty good.
That's
Yeah.
pretty accurate,
it's
really.
a calibration, and so it just, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you also have to take into account our, you know, the well measurements that were occurring back then. I mean, you have human error, you have a lot of things going on. So none of this data is anything to, you know.
When you're dealing with a incredibly complex, huge subbasin with little teeny data points that may or may not be correct
Yes.
related to these old historic records on these wells. That, you know, so considering all of that and looking at the general trends of the line, I think they were pretty happy with their results. They're never going to be perfect.
Sure.
I think I'd like-
general shape.
I think I'd like to see, you know, an outside district well model and how it compares. I don't know if I can look at this and just right now come up with something that says we should or shouldn't do that.
So we didn't bring those with us today, but in general, we're talking about the approach here. You're seeing some with minimal swings or changes in depths and some with larger. And it's just based on the local hydrology where that well is.
Yeah, I mean, if you pick up wells down by the San Joaquin River versus
Geology.
wells up in the, you know, northeastern area, I mean, the fluctuation